Well, hello and welcome back to The Eagle's Nest, the audio retelling of the great book by Charlie Supersinski titled Soaring with the Eagles, the Copper Peak Story. This is episode 24. And in our last episode, it was 1994, which was the last year that there was a ski flying meet at Copper Peak here in Ironwood. And in this episode that you're listening to now, we're going to take a little step back to 1975 or so, where there was kind of a division among the supporters of Copper Peak and ski jumping, where the traditionists of ski jumping wanted to emphasize more ski jumping rather than ski flying, as had been done in the past few years. So, here we go, 1975, and another new Wolverine Hill. The year 75 would prove pivotal for the junior and senior jumping programs of the Gogebic Range Ski Club. While Copper Peak was the main thrust of the corporation, a number of individuals supportive of the jumping program were elected to the board the past several years. They began to exert their influence and move the corporation in the direction which also included living up to the mission of the organization to promote the sport of ski jumping, quote unquote. Their objective was to be able to find a suitable site to build a larger jumping hill, one which could provide the opportunity to train for the larger hills in the country. The facilities of the Iron Bowl consisted of 35, 20, and 10-meter jumping hills. While excellent for developing a junior jumping program, they did not offer a training hill of sufficient size to make the easy transition to the larger hills very easy. Efforts by the junior division of the club were ongoing in the late 1960s and early 1970s to find a suitable location for a hill in the 50 to 55 meter range. Several sites were under consideration, including the Caves area, the Wolverine Hill site, and Copper Peak. Each site had distinct advantages and disadvantages. The lack of sufficient elevation of the caves did not allow for a hill of that size, but the present facilities being close to town made it very accessible to young skiers. A very large scaffold would have been required even for a hill in the 40 to 45 meter range. The old Wolverine site offered some clear advantages, as past history had proved, but a great deal of work would be necessary to revitalize the complex. Its location put it some 2 miles northeast of downtown Ironwood. Young riders would need to commute to the hill. One distinct advantage of the Wolverine Hill was the prevailing northwest winds. They would consistently provide a headwind for jumpers, making it ride like a much larger 70-meter hill. The Copper Peak complex offered the advantage of the newly installed chairlift, making it possible for jumpers to ride the lift to the top of the hill. This was a totally new concept for ski jumping facilities and would allow many more practice leaps on a given day. The disadvantage was its location, some 15 miles northeast of Ironwood, quite distant from the population centers of the county. The first attempt by supporters of the jumping program to get approval by the ski club board to build a 55-meter training hill occurred following a successful 1975 ski flying event at Copper Peak. The motion was by Dan Bull with a second by Wally Coos on March 7th of 1975 to construct the 55-meter hill at Copper Peak, but that motion was defeated. The issue was not dead by any means, as the consensus was building that something needed to be done to bring new life into the junior and senior jumping program. The supporters of the program were not satisfied with the vote and promised a proxy fight to elect members to the board who were supportive of the jumping program. At a special meeting called by President Supersinski of the Ski Club Board on Monday, April 7, 1975, 1 week before the scheduled annual meeting, the issue was revisited on the Wolverine site. A motion by Dan Bull and a second by Tom LeBlanc to construct the 55-meter hill at the Wolverine site. The motion was approved on a historic vote by the board and would commence a new era for ski jumping on the Gogebic Range. The ski board authorized the formation of the Wolverine Hill Committee to oversee the construction and maintenance of the facility as well as sponsoring competitions. The committee would be made up of the following members: Wally Coos, Dan Bull, Bob Shea, Doug Bull, Charles Supersinski, Frank Pribble, Rudy Verbis, and Bill Savinen. The Gogebic Range Ski Club Board also approved borrowing up to $25,000 to build the new Wolverine Hill. Carl Martish, technical delegate to several Copper Peak ski flying meets from Canada, was consulted in order to garner the latest criteria for ski hill design. It was decided to build Wolverine Hill with a 50-meter P-point and a K-point of 65 meters. Also, the in-run angle would be set at 35 degrees, the same as Copper Peak, but the takeoff would hang down 11 degrees. While going to a takeoff which was 11 degrees down, skiers would more closely follow the landing hill profile. Incorporated in the design was a parabolic knoll to P-point, which is basically the flight path of the skier. This added improvement in the design meant skiers would never be higher off the knoll than about 8 feet, thus making the hill much safer regardless of the distance jumped. Wolverine Hill, because it utilized the latest design criteria, would in time prove to be the best designed training and competition hills in the country. Because of the prevailing headwinds from the northwest, the hill consistently rode like a much larger hill. Charlie Supersinski assumed all responsibility for designing and laying out the hill, utilizing the experience of the construction of the scaffold at the Iron Bowl in the Caves area. The efforts of the Wolverine Hill Committee, including engineering and construction, were all volunteer except for the hauling of fill, which was contracted out, and the purchase of some lumber and fasteners. A twist of fate, or perhaps being lucky, helped expedite the building of the new Wolverine Hill. The local power utility had ordered a flat car load of 60 to 70-foot western cedar poles, which they had planned to use for their high-voltage lines in the area. The flat car was sitting in the rail yard in Ironwood, and young vandals decided to torch the load. The response by the Ironwood Fire Department was swift, but not in sufficient time to avoid scorching nearly every one of the huge poles. Despite a little burn on the outside of the poles, they, however, remained structurally sound. The Wolverine Committee made an offer to the utility of $300 and was able to purchase the entire load of some 40 poles at a price that was a fraction of what they would have normally cost. These poles would be used for the upper structure of the Wolverine Hill scaffold, and some would also be used to help stabilize the landing hill at Copper Peak. The first task at hand was to move fill to the top of the hill so the poles could be anchored in dirt rather than bedrock. Next, fill was moved into the in-run curve area and used to form the knoll. An estimated 10,000 cubic yards of fill was moved in place, and the parameters of the in-run were laid out. At first it was thought that the fill would have to be hauled a considerable distance, but on further examination of the hilltop, the necessary fill was located in a depression on top of the hill and only had to be moved about 100 yards maximum. The fill was located on property owned by George Hakala, a longtime supporter of ski jumping in the area, who gave permission to the Wolverine Hill Committee to extract it. It was hauled by truck a short distance and bulldozed in place by Len Rooney, who had the contract for the job. Setting of the poles took place in July of 1975. A truck with a large auger was rented from the electric utility to set the poles. They were all canted inward some 15 degrees to provide the structure with additional stability. After the poles were positioned, work commenced to put in place the cross beams, runners, decking, start gates, and sideboards. The entire process took nearly 2 months to complete, and when done, the structure was given a protective coat of creosote. The Wolverine Committee had stayed well within the budget for the project of $25,000, spending some $20,500 to build the structure and bring the hill profile to grade. Skeptics originally projected costs anywhere from $60,000 to $100,000 to rebuild Wolverine. The hill was ready for the first scheduled meet set for December 28, 1975. Snowfall on the Gogebic Range comes early and usually stays at about the time of the start of the deer season, which in Michigan traditionally begins on November 15th. The fall of 75 proved to be one of those years. That abundant snow came early. Well, deer hunters don't exactly like to trod through some 18 inches of snow. This was ideal for preparing Wolverine for its first test. The United States ski team heard of the early snow and made arrangements to come to Ironwood to practice on the new hill during the Thanksgiving weekend. Upon arrival, they set out to prepare the hill, which was done in short order. John Coos, who was at work at the U.S. Postal Service in Ironwood, got the call from the team to be the first rider on the hill. He willingly obliged, rushed out to the hill after work, and took that historic first ride on November 24, 1975. It would be the first of perhaps many hundreds of rides that John would experience over many years of practice and competition on the new Wolverine Hill. Members of the U.S. ski team and alternates, under the leadership of Coach Glenn Kotlarek, spent nearly 2 weeks training at Wolverine through the Thanksgiving holiday weekend. The people of Ironwood have been very good to us, said Kotlarek today. The accommodations have been excellent. And that's from the Daily Globe of November 29, 1975. Several team members even took the opportunity to visit the students at Roosevelt School on Airport Road in Ironwood and describe the sport of ski jumping to them. And so a total of 53 competitors registered for the first competition of the new Wolverine Hill, set for Sunday, December 28, 75, including 8 local jumpers. The top 5 finishers in Class A were all members of the U.S. ski team who had practiced here earlier. They included first Kip Sungard, second Jim Mackey, third Terry Kern, fourth Ken Harkins, and fifth Gene Burmeister. In Class B, the top 3 finishers were first Dan Watt of Duluth, second Joe Benzie of Iron Mountain, and third Mike Gabbery of Duluth. John Coos finished a respectable 4th, while Mike Coos placed 6th to top local skiers in Class B. Joe Johnson of the local club was 13th in Class B. In a strong junior class, John Broman of Duluth was first, Ward Patterson and Jim Grayheck, both from Ely, Minnesota, were respectively second and third. In the veterans class, Dave Engstrom from Ironwood and Rockford, Illinois, captured top honors, followed by Dan Lukala of Ishpeming. Kip Sungard had the longest jump of the day at 203 feet and also was judged the most graceful rider. Teresa Altabelli, the diminutive 15-year-old ski jumper from Iron Mountain and the only female competitor in the Midwest, had registered to compete in the inaugural Wolverine meet. With the goal to fly Copper Peak, several local skiers, John Coos, Dave Engstrom, and Gene Harma, started a journey to gain large hill experience wherever possible. They needed to convince experts in the field that they were able to handle the big hills sufficiently well to qualify for Copper Peak. The journey began with the 76-77 season and continued into the 77-78 season until the scheduled date of the meet at Copper Peak, set for March 2nd through the 5th of 1978. While their sights were set high on Copper Peak, the ultimate challenge in ski jumping, it would take a tremendous effort to achieve this goal. Motivation was a key ingredient in their success. Not until the building of the 50-meter hill at Wolverine did local skiers have the opportunity to practice on a large hill other than when they had competed outside of the area. These experiences were limited. Wolverine Hill, with its consistent headwind and state-of-the-art design, gave local skiers the necessary big hill experience to challenge the country's 90-meter hills as well as Copper Peak. The 26th annual Wolverine Ski Jumping Tournament was set for Sunday, December 19, 1976. Nearly 70 skiers had registered for the event in 4 classes. The top finisher in Class A was the Flying Finn Tano Keiko of Canada. The top 3 winners in Class B were Kevin Trinrod, Tri-Norse, Larry Brotherton from Duluth, and Jim McDonald, Tri-Norse. Bruce Harma of Ironwood captured 4th place. In the veterans class, local favorites Dave Engstrom and John Coos placed 2nd and 3rd, respectively, with top honors going to Tom Dennison of St. Paul. The second meet of the new Wolverine Hill had produced consistently longer jumps compared with the inaugural event, due to the work by the Wolverine Committee in digging out the landing hill transition the previous summer. There were many jumps greater than 200 feet, with Kip Sundegaard's 215-foot leap being 1 foot shy of tying the hill record. Work had also been done to enhance the parking lots so spectators could view the competition from their vehicles. 1977 was a year of preparing for the peak. The Gogebic Range Ski Club decided not to hold a competition at Copper Peak in 1977. The meet could only have been a North American event with potentially skiers from the United States, Canada, and Japan. National support for the Canadians was being polled, and only a few would be able to compete. Japan traditionally provided several skiers, and the American ranks were thinning. Consequently, the ski club officials opted to hold an international meet in 1978 instead, when more skiers would be available. The lack of a Copper Peak meet opened the door for a second meet in the 1976-77 season at Wolverine Hill. It was scheduled for February 27, 1977. With their sights set on riding Copper Peak, local skiers continued their efforts to convince USSA officials that they were capable of handling the larger hills throughout the country, particularly those in the Midwest. Thus, the 76-77 ski season was an ongoing effort to earn their wings for the right to challenge Copper Peak. Johnny Coos started the season with a first-place finish in the veterans class at Madison on Sunday, January 23rd. 1 week later at Rockford, Illinois, he earned his second victory, besting his close friend Dave Engstrom, who captured 2nd. Ironwood's other competitor, Bruce Harma, placed 4th in Class B. History was made at Wolverine Hill at the Central Division Championship on February 27th of 77, when Greg Winsberger tied Torgel Tokol's record of 216 feet. It had lasted 35 years on two similar but different slides constructed on the site. Because he faltered on his second ride, Winsberger placed third in Class A, with Dave Tompton of Eau Claire earning first and Canadian Tano Keiko placing second. In Class B, Minneapolis skiers Steve Ellison and Mark DeLorenz placed first and third respectively, while Larry Brotherton of Duluth earned second place. Ironwood's Bruce Harma placed a distant 14th, but junior class honors were won by Yuri Salstrom, NMU, Wade Cattell of Madison, and Jim Grahek of NMU. In a highly competitive veterans class, top honors went to Dave Hicks of Duluth, followed by Tom Dennison of Minneapolis and Dave Engstrom of Rockford and Ironwood. Ironwood skier John Coos and Gary Coos placed respectively 4th and 7th. Adding more jumps and cross-country trails was a highlight of 1977. A progress report on activities of the Wolverine Committee was made at the annual Gogebic Range Ski Club meeting. Dan Bowl, who is the Wolverine Committee liaison, gave a brief report on Wolverine. He informed everyone present that the Wolverine Committee plans to build an additional 2 small hills for training purposes on the Wolverine Hill site, as well as work on the cross-country trails. The chalet will also be improved, and a roof was being built over the concession stand, which would add another room with an area for computations and the announcer. During the early September of 1977, the Michigan Department of Natural Resources, DNR, sent a news release to area media announcing that $50,000 was available to nonprofit groups to develop cross-country ski trails in the Upper Peninsula. The author, Charlie Supersinski, wrote a proposal requesting funds to further develop and enhance the 7 kilometers of existing trails. The Wolverine Committee sent 3 members, Wally Coos, Bob Shea, and Dan Bull, along with Ernie Matson of the Gogebic Range Ski Club, to a meeting held in the Copper Country to represent the position of our area ski club to help secure funding. And so they must have done a good job, because the Ironwood Daily Globe of October 26th of 1977 had these headlines: The Gogebic Range Ski Club awarded ski trail funds. The Gogebic Range Ski Corporation has been awarded a state grant of $7,250 to construct cross-country trails in the vicinity of Wolverine Ski Hill, according to State Representative Russell Rusty Hellman. Hellman said the grant to the Wolverine Ski Hill Committee is the first of several state grants earmarked in the pilot program to assist private nonprofit corporations in developing cross-country ski trails in the western Upper Peninsula. So that was just great news, and we're running out of time again for this episode of The Eagle's Nest. This is your narrator, Dan McManman, inviting you to join us again for the next episode of The Eagle's Nest. The best way to see and hear us is to go to the YouTube app on your smart TV or computer or on your phone and search Copper Peak Eagle's Nest. All the episodes so far are there all the time, and the episodes are numbered sequentially, so if you wanted to, you could watch one episode and then it would go to the next episode automatically if you wanted it to. Also, you can find us on the Copper Peak streaming site by using social media sites like Google or Yahoo and search Copper Peak. Episodes play on the half hour, and we're also on Copper Peak Radio 102.1 FM at 6:08 a.m. and p.m. and 11:08 a.m. and p.m. Central Time. Charlie's book, Soaring with the Eagles, The Copper Peak Story, is available at the Depot and the Downtown Art Place in Ironwood. Once again, thanks for joining us here on the Eagle's Nest, and see you next time, and think Copper Peak.